Hi everybody, I'm Tash,
And I'm Damo.
and we are so excited to bring you this week's episode of The Barry Chronicles. Damo, this week we have a very special guest from Real Life Medicine, the one and only Dr. Lucy Burns. Dr. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you on the Barry Chronicles.
Thanks, Tash. Thanks, Damo. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honour to be on your potty.
We are very excited today to talk about behaviours and things that we can do to maximise the good things that we want in our lives and minimise the things that we do not want. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a really great chat around that. But first, maybe you might like to share just a little bit of background on who you are and how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. In medicine, often people gravitate to the areas that kind of personally affect them, which is, we see this commonly. And I guess I came into the sort of weight loss space for similar reasons, although my emphasis is always more on metabolic health. So I'm sure like a zillion of your listeners, I did dieting. I dieted my whole life. I think I did my first diet at 16. I now look back and think, oh my God, I did my first diet at 16 when I had like a BMI of 22. But, like everybody, I just thought I was fat. I was tall. I constantly, people constantly commented on me being big because I was taller. I had big feet and I felt enormous. And so for me, I wanted to shrink and just be some petite Kylie Minogue type character, which was never going to happen because, I'm 5'10" and I've got a size 10 foot. But anyway, so like lots of people though, I was a good dieter. Like I could diet like anybody. I could count points. I could lose weight. I could, do those behaviors short term, and I would exercise like crazy and I would restrict like crazy, and it worked. And I would go, yay. And then yeah. And then I'd stop doing it, and then I'd just put weight back on, and then I'd go and do the things. And so, this continued for like 30 years. It was like, wow.
Yep.
And then I got to the point where I thought, you know what, I'm not dieting anymore. This is ridiculous. I'm making peace with my body. I've birthed 2 children. I'm fine. I don't need to be Kylie Minogue anymore. I'm happy to be, Lucy Burns. But unfortunately, I also developed some metabolic health conditions, which were pre-diabetes, fatty liver disease. And look, I was the heaviest I'd ever been, even beyond pregnancy. So there were these 2 conflicting bits. One of me was sort of, embracing the body positive thing about, well, don't worry about your size, like just, you're beautiful the way you are. And I did believe all of that, absolutely. And I was very comfortable in my elastic pants. But on the other hand, I also had to recognize that there were some health implications coming from this behavior. So
I can relate to that. I really can.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. And it's a fine line, isn't it, between going, well, we don't want to embrace diet culture anymore. It's toxic. It's terrible. Our worth is not determined by the size of our waistband or the number on the scales. But at the same time, we can't ignore that there are some health implications that come with particularly increasing abdominal weight, which is where mine all was. I had these great skinny legs and this kind of tummy. So anyway, I thought, this is, what am I going to do? And I didn't want to do anything because I remembered in the past how terrible dieting was or how hard it was. And so, long story short, I came across low carb nutrition, which initially, look, to be honest, I just treated it like another diet. Counted carbs, weighed, measured, did all the things. But a couple of things happened that felt really different. And one was that unlike previous dieting where I used to think hunger was like a badge of honor, the hungrier you were, clearly the more you were losing weight must be good for you.
The better you were, the stronger you were.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't hungry. It was like, because again, I had done low fat for 30 years. So that sort of became really clear to me that, and then actually my metabolic markers changed so profoundly that I thought, God, here I am not hungry and I'm improving my health. How does that all work? Because that seemed so different to my previous sort of thought processes. Yeah. And so so then I got into, the low carb space, and And initially I thought rather naively, all I need to do is teach everyone low carb nutrition and we will all have the same effect that I've had. Yes. Well, again, that didn't quite work out that way because I realized there were people that wanted to do low carb, but, kept that, the falling off the wagon thing that we always talk about, and why were they doing that and what was happening and what was the processes? So then I did more study on behavioral science and understanding people's, what drives change, how can we improve that, and realized that actually it's complicated. It's not, there's no magic, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic solution, but there are ways that we can put bits and pieces of this puzzle to make a more complete picture.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that determination just isn't enough to get us where we want to be.
You're absolutely right, Damo. And in fact, the women that we work with are often extremely competent. They seem to be able to be successful in all parts of their life. They're managing directors, they're high achievers, they have good discipline. But for whatever reason, and, I understand all the reasons now, they feel that they can't quite manage this area. And, it's not as simple as just eat less and move more.
No, it is not. It really is not. That is definitely and even after the bariatric surgery, we can still find ourselves in a place where eat less and move more doesn't always fix it too. So it's a whole spectrum when we're talking about metabolic health, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, what you eat is important, absolutely. But why you eat, that's actually the key.
Yep.
And when you can understand that, then you can make some changes. But if you really, and again, not just surface level, why I eat, like people go, oh, I just eat because I'm bored, or I eat because I'm stressed. I mean, that's the first step. But then we have to go, okay, well, what actually is really going on? Because the other thing humans are really good at doing is finding the loophole. People, again, people who've had bariatric surgery can still find loopholes if they don't know what's going on in their brain.
Oh, 100%. I remember very vividly back at the start, because I'm nearly 7 years post-op now, and I can vividly remember looking for ways or things that I could consume because I had just that burning self-loathing inside. And I identify that now, but back then I was just so driven to want to quiet all of the noise that was happening, and not really food noise, but just noise that was happening in my head. And that was my coping mechanism, was food. I was trying to actively find ways around my gastric bypass.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, that may have even been subconscious, actively, but subconsciously as well, because people, I think the number one sentence I hear a lot is, I don't know why I keep doing this.
Yeah.
And people that they really, understanding brains is complicated, but it's also because we're not taught really to understand our feelings, understand our thoughts, particularly our generation. I think maybe younger kids these days are with mindfulness and some of their practices. But for us, it was all about just, stop sniveling and keep going.
Blind compliance.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like that phrase.
I mean, I remember hearing the stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think there's two ways that humans have been conditioned, again, depending on gender. So for blokes, they're completely out of touch with their feelings because, big boys don't cry. So, if you have any emotions, well, just ignore them, which therefore means it's hard for men to access those feelings. And so then, that they're all suppressed. So how do they manage them? Well, often it's with alcohol or food or gambling, and they're all part of the same spectrum. And for women, we were told, don't be too loud, be quiet, be a good girl, be compliant.
Yeah, good
Look
girl.
after everybody else. So we're all out there, putting ourselves at the bottom of the list, making sure everyone else is happy and all their needs are met. And so there's these two sort of stories that are not, it's not 100% each way, but, they're the sort of this fabric of our Australian society.
So how do we start just grassroots base level, somebody that comes to you and identifies that there's some things that they would like to change, what's the starting point?
Yeah.
Because for so many people, we do know that we need something, but we don't know where to start usually.
Yeah, I think for me, like I went to my GP a number of times saying, I want to lose weight. It really wasn't until after I'd had weight loss surgery and I realized the relationship that I had with food, and there was certainly, and leading up to that, food was about the only thing that I had any control over.
Yeah.
I could control what I put in my mouth, and I felt like the rest of my life was just spiraling.
Yeah, which is interesting because there's also, I see the converse where people can control all sorts of parts of their life but feel they can't control their food, and that feels spiraling, and that they don't know why they're eating. So I guess the way I like to think of things is understanding change behavior and understanding that there is, behavior change has been well studied, and there's some phrases that, again, clinicians, psychologists will be aware of, but they don't really translate to everyday language. So I always like to use everyday language because honestly, So if we look at the change behavior cycle, there's usually 5 phases. So there's a phrase called pre-contemplation, which I just think is honestly, what a naff phrase is that? I've never used that in a sentence except when I'm giving my change behavior lecture, because nobody ever says, "Oh, I'm in pre-contemplation about weight loss." They don't actually know what it often even means. But I can tell you, and your listeners all know this, anybody who is overweight knows it. Nobody, it's like if you go to the doctor and they ever say to you, have you thought about losing weight? It's like, what? Thought about it? Think about it every day. Like,
100%.
no, and it's like, weight loss would be helpful. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. It would be, but I don't know how to do it.
I love that.
Exactly.
The amount of times I thought that, or even just some rando person would come up and, "Oh, you're so fat," and I'm like, I didn't know.
Oh, really? Thank you for pointing that out. I had no idea. I know. So I think the thing is that anybody whose body is storing excess fat, they know. So we don't need to tell them. But when we're in that pre-contemplation phase, so technically it means the time before you're thinking about changing. So, i.e., you're not even thinking about it yet, really. And there's lots of reasons why we'll be in that phase, but the most common is that it's protective for our brain.
Yep.
So when our brain thinks we need to change, there's a whole heap of overlay that comes with that. So, it can feel scary, it can feel hard, it can feel complicated, it can feel like exposing ourselves to another round of failure. So there's a whole heap of reasons why our brain will not contemplate the idea of changing yet. So at some level, I think the easiest way to describe it is really it's a form of denial, but it's there because it keeps your brain safe. Unfortunately, it's not that safe for our body because whatever's going on, continues to go on. And so then, we can move into the next phase. And the next phase usually comes about when there's a line in the sand. So, everyone's got their own line in the sand, and it might be that they've promised themselves they won't get over a certain weight, and then they get over the certain weight and they go, right, that's it, I've had enough. Or they've grown out of all their clothes, or their undies don't fit, or there's something. It might even be like me, which was a metabolic health diagnosis. And I thought, I've got to do something. And so we move into this next phase, which again is called contemplation, which sounds really fun. I'm just contemplating a game of croquet on the lawn or something.
Yes. Oh, we're contemplating it. Oh, how nice.
Yes, contemplating sounds all fun. But actually, I think for weight loss, it's not fun at all. Because all of a sudden you're in this bit where you can no longer deny that there's an issue going on, but you haven't quite thought about how you're going to change. It can feel really awful. All of a sudden you can feel like, especially if you've lost weight and gained weight, you suddenly feel guilty, like you're an idiot, like, oh my God, I've put it all back on. How could this happen? I'm such a fool. I've got no willpower. And you feel actually really horrible. And the idea then of actually having to do something also feels hard and horrible.
And what do we do exactly?
Yeah, exactly. So I call this phase purgatory because it feels like hell on earth. You're stuck, you don't know what to do, you're feeling horrible. but you can't pretend there's not a problem anymore. So the thing about purgatory is we will do two things. We will either go back to denial because that was safe and easy and we didn't have to do anything, or we'll move forward into the next phase, which is technically called preparation. And so for a lot of people, I see them when they're in purgatory and we talk about this and go, well, purgatory feels awful, so we've got to get out of here. So how can we make preparation and the next phase feel better? And so humans are funny because we will only move or change or go forward when the pain of staying where we are is greater than the pain of change.
Yep, 100%.
So again, what we sometimes do then is minimize the pain of where we are by denial, by, running back. But, and again, it's not really a long-term effective strategy at all. But if we can maximize in our brain the pain of where we are and minimize the pain of change. So we then go, okay, instead of the pain of change being, oh my God, this is going to be so hard, I'm going to fail again, it's going to be terrible, how long will I keep it up for? I can't do it because, I've got book group this week, I'll start again in 2 months' time because I've got a wedding. We can look at all of the things that our brain perceives as being hard and work out, are they really hard?
Yeah.
So, and some of the things that we think are hard because of the way we think about them. And I know this sounds a little esoteric, but if you think about just then where I said, I can't start because I've got book group this week, I cannot tell you how many people say that to me or have done that or think, I can't do your 12-week program because I've got a wedding on at the end of week 2. And it's like, okay, this is all around the all or nothing thinking and perfectionism, which we have been conditioned to believe in because of dieting and diet culture, where everything is about being perfect. And if you're not perfect, then you're cheating or you're breaking your diet.
Yep. Failing.
Yeah. And that language is so pervasive and so subconscious that we don't even realize that we're doing it.
It is.
I mean, we even call cheat days.
Yeah. I know. And it's like, really? How does that work? And then, so it's unpacking a lot of that is helpful, giving people really easy strategies to start, because again, what we do when we're in this purgatory place, our brain wants to do a complete 180. And I mean, I'm sure you've done this when you're stressed or overwhelmed. You think that the only way to get through your life is to run away to a deserted island.
Yes, 100%.
Complete change of your life. That's the only solution is what your brain's saying.
Yep.
But, I don't own a deserted island and I don't know too many people that do.
I've wished I did recently. I've definitely had those thoughts, even just in the last week. Surely if I just went away to the mountains for a few weeks, I would feel so much better.
Yeah, I used to think that the only way I could lose and maintain weight was if I somehow went to some sort of, in my head I use this phrase and I hope I'm not offending anyone, but it would be if I went to some sort of fat camp.
Yep,
I would
go.
I wouldn't have to do my life. I would be able to, focus on me, lose the weight, blah, blah, blah. And, suddenly it would all be magical.
It was like all those people that used to go on that TV show.
I know. Yeah, which was the most destructive, psychologically destructive show ever. So the thing is that our brains they focus on perfectionism because it feels safe. It feels like, well, if I do this thing and I do it perfectly, then I'll get results. And so that's why we go there. But, the thing I really say to people is that it doesn't have to be perfect.
I love that. I love it so much.
I know, but it does have to be consistent, because then the loophole brain, the one that's always looking for the, the easy way out, will go, oh, it doesn't have to be perfect. Great. I can do all these things that are actually probably not going to help you long term.
Yeah.
I'll do perfect for lunch, but breakfast and dinner are optional.
The way that, and I can completely relate, because I very much had that all or nothing mentality. And it was pervasive in every single area of my life. But what I've had to do in order to maintain my weight, because yes, I've had gastric bypass, but as we've already said, you can learn to eat around those things. You can learn to do behaviors that will circumvent long-term maintenance if you want to, if you really want to.
Yeah.
I've had to give myself a framework that I eat within, and I'm consistent with with making sure that I hit certain things. There's no dogma in it. That I used to be dogmatic about a diet. If I was on the diet, then I'm doing it, and it's it's very, very precise. I have to do every single thing. But then if I stopped, or if I cheated or did something, then I'd throw everything away. It's just like, oh, well, clearly I can't do this. I'm going back to how I was.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now I give myself grace.
Yes. And I think that, and that's part of the whole self-compassion side of things. So, within that change behavior model, perfection will never help you. And that's why we don't want to go. That's why we don't want to make changes, because they feel so hard. They have to be so big. And so we have this, idea that has to be perfect. And then what we do is, if we have a slip or a lapse, or we use the phrase creep. So we have this SLC framework, slip, lapse, and creep. And slip I define as, an emotional event. So you were going fine, you had your plan, but then something emotional happened and you fall back to your old tool, which is food or alcohol. And so you sit on the couch and eat a bowl of ice cream and drink a bottle of wine or whatever. So that's a slip. Creep, a lapse is something where you've got your plan, but there's an event. So, it might be the wedding, or it might be your birthday, or it might be Christmas Day, and you're planning that you're just going to, deviate from your normal way of eating for one meal or one day. The main tricky thing with lapse is that sometimes the lapses for a long time. And then the creep is where you've got your meal, you've got your thoughts and your food but there's just these little things the creep can be kind of portion size, or it can be sneaky little things that at one level don't matter, but at a ongoing level do. So for example, it might be, I'm just going to have, a bite of this donut, which, again, one level doesn't matter, big deal. Except that one bite might become 2 bites, and then, it might become once a day, and then it might become 3 times a day. And all of a sudden you're actually not doing your plan at all. It's just kind of creeped off.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah.
And then I bought a whole pack of Krispy Kremes.
Yeah. So the SLC framework, slip, lapse, and creep. And then the way we teach managing that is another SLC, which is self-reflection, learning, and compassion. So one of the things I see in lots of weight management groups, Facebook groups, programs, is people go, don't worry about it. Tomorrow's another day. And at one level, that is really helpful advice, because they're basically saying don't beat yourself up, because we know that's not helpful. But I think what we're not learning is, again, understanding, why did we do that behavior in the first place? So if we can learn from past events, then we can help future events, because nothing ever happens once.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So I think when people go, oh, well, that was a one-off. No, maybe winning Tats Lotto, that's probably happens. Yeah. But for most of us, it might be, oh, well, that was a one-off because, I was stressed, or that was a one-off because I went to a wedding, or that was a one-off because, no, there's no one-off. There is repetitive or repeated behaviors that occur, and they're okay. We just need to understand why we do them. And then work out, well, what could we do next time? Like, could we predict this behavior a bit earlier and put some changes or some barriers or some options in place so that we just don't keep doing that same behavior?
I would love to talk with you on this particular thing about Easter.
Yes.
And me. So my first Easter post-bariatric surgery was easy. I just didn't have any chocolate at all. Prior to my weight loss surgery, chocolate was my kryptonite. I grew up in a house where, like, Damo and I were always bigger kids, and our poor mum, she copped so much from doctors, from the medical profession over our size, that those things just weren't in our house. So Easter was amazing because we got to have chocolate. We got to have the things that we, that we wanted to have. My first Easter post-bariatric surgery, easy. I just didn't have any chocolate. Second Easter arrived. I did have chocolate, but I didn't just have one. I had chocolate, and then I'd tell myself, oh, well, it's okay. It's only a little bit. And I started doing that every day for about a week. And then I started having some in the morning and some at night, because if I had too much all at once, then I'd experience dumping. So I worked out the ways that I could still have what I wanted to have. And I found myself doing that for nearly 2 months.
Yeah. Yes. So that's a great example of the L that is a lapse. Like you made a deliberate decision to have some chocolate on a day. And again,
Yep.
that's okay. You're
Yep.
the boss of you. There is no one gets, diabetes from one day of chocolate, or nobody
That's right.
gets overweight from one day of chocolate.
But now what I do, so
Yeah.
obviously big meltdown, it started to affect my weight. Now by then I was at my goal weight, and this was right around when COVID had unleashed its wrath upon Victoria and we were all sitting in our houses.
Yes.
So I also started to have the odd glass of wine. So not only had chocolate crept back in, but alcohol, hot on its heels, came back as well. And all of a sudden I was telling myself, it's fine, it's okay, it's once in a while, it's all right. And it was a point where I realized that I was having these things every day, and I was just having a couple of glasses of wine about four times a week, that this isn't just once in a while now. This is actually becoming an issue again. I will stop doing this.
Yes.
But that is the point at which I actually started asking myself questions. Why do I do this?
Yeah. Yep.
Why am I doing this behavior?
Yes.
What does this come from? I talked to my psychologist about it. We started unpacking things at that point, and that really is when things started to actually change. Now I can mindfully practice the thought, okay, I would like to have some chocolate on this date. This is how I'm going to manage that. This is how I will manage the feelings around that. So this is what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So you can do the self-reflection and the learning. So learning why you do your behavior.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, there's a few triggers for why we eat or drink, and most of them around soothing and feeling better.
Yeah.
So again, we need to be really kind to ourselves, because at the end, our brain is always only trying to do two things. It's trying to keep us safe or make us feel better.
Yeah.
There's basically, it's two jobs. So it gives you this idea that this product, chocolate or wine or whatever, is going to make you feel better. And the tricky thing is, it does. So
Exactly.
it's not giving you, mushrooms and saying broccoli and going, yeah, they'll make you feel better, because they don't have the same effect, unfortunately.
No, they don't.
So your brain's not wrong. But what's tricky is that, we've been marketed to within an inch of our lives. Every day we are bombarded with messages from food companies, from alcohol companies, and again, I'm going to chuck gambling in there, because that's just terrible rife at the moment, on why you should do these behaviors, why they will make you feel good, why they will make you feel happy. And then when people do them, because, basically they were told to, the companies take zero responsibility and just say to everyone, oh, we didn't tell you to do it in excess. We told you just to do it occasionally. And, now it's your fault that you're excessively using our product or eating our product or whatever it is that they're marketing to. So, yeah, so I think you're absolutely right, Tash. It is about unpacking some of that and knowing that some of those drivers are buried quite deeply for some people, and that some people do need more help than other people. And that doesn't make you hopeless or weak either. That just means you've come from a different place. I think, so, I know, we do this, we run programs, we run a 12-week program. And one of the things I see in it sometimes is people, again, falling into comparison and looking at, either they're not losing as much weight as other people, or they don't seem to be able to stick to the program when other people can. And so they feel bad about that. And I always go, well, you may be all kind of we're all on the same boat at the moment, but we haven't come from the same land.
That's right, we haven't. Or we're all in the same storm, but our boats are different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a COVID saying, which I think was really, really helpful, because you're right. Everybody was experiencing COVID, but some people were trying to work and they had 4 children at home, all doing homeschooling, and, or other people, like I was an essential worker. I didn't stop working. So it was like trying to manage everything. And other people were, lonely. They lived by themselves. They had no social contact, and, it was devastating. So yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. We all experience this so differently. Even like coming into Easter this year, the chocolate season, as it's known in our house, I've been able to take a step back, ask myself, how am I feeling? Because we've had a lot going on in our lives. How am I feeling at the moment? Is it a wise idea for me to have a lot of the things that would trigger me in the house right now? Just from a mindful point of view, not because I'm trying to restrict or limit myself, but just from a mindful point of view, is that a kind thing to do to myself? And I've decided, no, it's not. So we aren't purchasing the same amount that we would have once purchased. That's just my way of dealing with that for me for this year.
Yeah.
But that's taken 7 years.
Yeah.
It didn't happen in year 1 or 2 or 3. It took a long time.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's a lot of it is around rewiring our brain pathways, which takes time. It is absolutely doable. But for a lot of people, it's around, what does the food or the food item represent? What does it mean to them? And, there was a time, and I'm sure you guys will relate, where, I was like a marketer's dream. Anything in the supermarket that had a, star on it that said new flavor, I'd be like, whoa, I wonder what this is. And I'd have to try it. Or any, if any limited time offer, if there was a limited flavor of something at a Macca's or Krispy, and again, I feel like a confession. I've actually never had a Krispy Kreme because they came to Australia after I'd changed my relationship with food. But if they'd arrived earlier, I reckon I would be like a Krispy Kreme aficionado. I would have tasted every single one. I would be able to tell you about them. I'd be able to tell you the price of them. I'd be able to tell you every single thing about them. So again, changing things, the way you think about food takes time, but it is so doable. It is so doable.
So what are some of the keys about that? Keys that will free people's thinking in that area, because no one wants to have a miserable life. Even post bariatric surgery, the goal is not who can be the most miserable is the winner. It's who can actually eat a great, balanced, healthy, rounded diet.
Yeah.
I mean it, eating plan, whatever, however we want to word that. I don't like the word diet, but how we choose to nourish our body.
Yeah.
What are some really good keys that you would suggest to people to start to work on that relationship?
Yeah. So some of it is thinking about the end point. So, and again, recognizing our condition. So when we dieted, the goal was weight loss. That was the only goal, was the only thing that mattered. And basically dieting doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there. That's what everybody will have you believe. And that culture still exists. Like, again, there'll be people in diet groups who go, oh my God, I've had gastro for 3 days, but the good thing is I've lost weight. And it's like, oh. So weight loss at any cost is really unhealthy. And so what we want to do is go, well, we want to think about our body as like this precious ornament. It's this precious, not ornament, precious vehicle. It's a precious thing that, you're in charge of. And when we've got something that's really precious, we want to nurture it and nourish it. Very much in the same way that we do when we have, like lots of people, when they have a baby, they spend all this time researching baby food and how to feed this child and what it needs for brain development, and they're doing all of this, and then so they're doing that for the baby, and yet there's they're eating stuff that isn't of the same quality for themselves. So really thinking about, we don't want to do weight loss at any cost. And we don't want to think about the way we're eating or moving as a transactional relationship. It's not, if I do this thing, I will lose 10 kilos, 1 kilo per week as promised by this diet plan. Because it's not how weight loss works. It's not how health works. And it's not how our body works. So what we really want to be able to do is get to a point where, and look, I call it a playbook. So you've got your own playbook. So Tasha's playbook and Damo's playbook and Lucy's playbook are all going to be different because we are different people, different sizes, different bodies, different energy levels, different activity levels, different sleep levels, different stress levels. So we can't all have the same plan.
Exactly.
But then you go, but what is my plan? Well, this is where you need to learn your plan. So you learn things like, okay, how do we nourish our body? What, and again, protein is helpful and all of those things. So learning the nutrition basics is important. But then learning things like, for example, there'll be particular trigger foods. So for me, chips or bread, I don't really care that much about that. Like, it's not a trigger food for me. So if I was to have a chip, a Dorito, I'm not going to wolf down the whole packet, because for my brain, it's not excited by that at all. Whereas if it was a packet of Tim Tams, one Tim Tam was hard to then not eat the whole packet. So at the start in particular, I recognized, well, what are my particular trigger foods? And at the start, I might avoid them. Now, that doesn't mean I need to avoid them forever, but at the
Agreed.
start, I'm trying to I'm trying to make it easy. I realized at the start there would be things like my brain would go, well, just have one won't hurt, everything in moderation, this has to be sustainable. And so I'd go, yeah, and I'd agree with myself, and I'd have my one, and then I'd be back having the second.
Cheering yourself on.
Yeah, oh, good, yeah. Then the second one, and then the third, and then I'd be going, then I'd, press the stuff it button, go, well, stuff it, I've ruined it, I might as well eat the whole packet. And the only way I can not keep doing this is to not have them in the house, and the only way to get rid of it is to eat it, because I've invested good money in this packet of Tim Tams, $1.90.
That was always my moderation, was the end of the packet of Tim Tams.
I could only stop if they were actually gone.
And after my surgery, like, I cut everything out that had ever was my trigger. But then it was sort of around the 18-month mark, and I'd had a couple of spinal surgeries, and things just I wasn't feeling great. And for the first time, I went with my wife and daughter, and we had KFC, and I didn't put any weight on. And that sent me down a really not great path, because, oh, look, I could do it last week and I didn't put anything on, and I did it this week and I still haven't put anything on, or maybe I can do it twice next week.
It's
creeping.
creeping.
And it really was that simple. And someone looking on might go,
but
that's so dumb, or that's moderation, or, but for me, it wasn't moderation. For me, it was putting something in, doing something that I actually had very little control over.
Yeah. And I think there's a really interesting point there, and that is that if you can't moderate a food product, then it is easier, particularly at the start, to avoid it. So I realized that, there was that ad on telly ages ago about the genie that gave you a packet of Tim Tams that never ran out.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, if I had that, I'd probably eat 100 a day, because it never runs out. So I realized, and again, a couple of phrases that I've got that I just put on in my brain on repeat. So one of them was, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And I really found that helpful for particular products. Again, not everything. I didn't need to do it for everything, but for particular products. And again, I don't need to do that now, but at the start I did. And that was all to do with dopamine reward pathways and rewiring that. And, we have another little thing that we do called the reward system reset. So for a lot of us, our reward system has been hijacked by, again, processed food. And so we need to be able to down-regulate our dopamine and rewire our memories around food and understand our emotional triggers. That's the sort of basis of the reward path reset. And so, again, coming up with little phrases that helped me. So my other phrase, and I still use it, is my body is not the bin. So I don't need to eat the food to get rid of it. I can actually just get rid of it. Like, it is all right to throw it out. Although for lots of us, it's like food wastage is a sin, akin to triple homicide.
But that was one of my most, I think, freeing moments, was when I was at a restaurant and I was full. And it was the first time I'd ever pushed the plate away and got up and left. I didn't ask to take it home, because I realised that if I took it home and I nibbled on it for the rest of the day, even though I'd had my sleeve, I could still eat that whole restaurant meal, and then I would still have my dinner, or, so I was actually managing to fit in a whole other meal that I shouldn't have, that I didn't actually need.
Yeah. And so I think, sorry, Tash, you go.
No, I love what we're talking about here with regards to dopamine and the fact that we can actually rewire that with time, because it has definitely been my experience. I can have certain things in the house now that were a big problem to me back in the day, but now it's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. They can be here. I could have one and then it would just be one and that would be it. But I was, and particularly within the bariatric community, because we are all on a spectrum, not everybody, and I accept that not everybody would struggle with certain food items like I do, but I did not understand or have the capacity to moderate my intake of those certain foods. I just didn't have that capacity at all.
No, and because of this dogma that, you know, we shouldn't restrict anything, that there are no bad foods, everything in moderation, you then feel like you're the hopeless one, or you're the one with
Yes.
the problem, or you're the the loser who can't moderate. And I think
or don't food shame, and it's certainly, it's not that, because I actually agree that people can eat whatever they want to eat. But for me, it's what's behind my reason to want to eat that way, because I love my body and I want to look after it.
Yes.
And I want to give it what it needs so that I'm healthy and well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, we have to be mindful that the processed food industry, they spend billions making their products hyper palatable. They do it on purpose because their job is not to sell us healthy food or make it convenient for us. Their job is actually just to sell product, whatever way they can. So they sneak in little things and, market it with words like high protein or high fiber or something that might even make us feel like it's healthy. Or if it's clearly that it's not, actually, a health sort of food, it'll be all marketed around feelings, and Cadbury's is going to make you feel better. And it's, the road to joy is paved with Cadbury's and all these things, like so much marketing. So we have to be really aware of that and aware of marketing mischief, or, actually, I think it's more than mischief. Sometimes it's outright malevolence.
Yeah.
Because they're not there to help you. They're there to make money.
Yeah.
So how long does it take? How long does it take to rewire a brain?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a great question. And the answer is depends. I would love to be able to say to people, 21 days to change a habit. That is the biggest lie ever, because
great marketing.
Yeah. Because again, it depends a little bit on how deeply entrenched the reward pathway is. And for many of us, it's also around understanding our brains, and in particular, understanding things like neurodiversity, which also play a role in this. So neurodiversity and trauma play a big role in reward pathways. We know that particularly people with ADHD have a lower dopamine, so they're constantly looking for external dopamine, which is, and again, not everyone with ADHD, but lots, which is why there's a big crossover with binge eating disorder. We know that people with trauma have often only had food as their one thing that they can access to soothe. Food is legal and socially acceptable and relatively cheap, and so for them it is part of that safety mechanism.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say everybody can rewire their brain. But the first thing you need to do is, again, have awareness of your thoughts. If you don't know what you're thinking, or you don't notice what you're thinking, you can't possibly change them. And know that you can change your thoughts. You can go from thinking that, a food is the most delicious thing ever and how could you possibly live without it, to going, this product, it doesn't help me. It doesn't taste like I thought it would, and it's not going to serve me. And again, using more emotive language around that. So I have a little phrase, and again, I've got lots of little phrases, but one of the things I recognize now is that my body is worthy and valuable. Like you said, Tash, it is something to be cherished. And cheap food, which is what a lot of this processed stuff in particular is, and marketing is all about bargains. So there's often 2 for 1, all of these things. It's like wearing a cheap pair of leggings where you can see your undies.
Yep.
We don't want that. You deserve better leggings. You deserve good quality leggings where your undies aren't going to show. And it's the same with the food. You deserve good quality food. If you're going to have food, again, the best quality that you can afford. And I realize that I'm coming from a place of privilege here with access to finances. But in general, understanding that marketing is there to sell you products and to sell you as much as possible, because they know the more you eat, the more you eat. So that's why, Maccas aren't being your friend with the Super Size Me. They know the more you eat their product, the more you'll want their product.
Yeah.
And so understanding that is really helpful. And knowing that the first bit is the hardest. There will be a little temper tantrum in your brain as the dopamine receptors are all going, well, hang on, where's our thing? But that you can rewire them and you can replace then that reward system with what is potentially lower dopamine, but much better for you options.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 12-week course that you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So again, what I recognised fairly early on is that yes, knowledge is super important, and there's it's a loud world out there, the particularly weight loss world or health world even. So having access to good knowledge is really important. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not just one thing. It's actually not just nutrition. I would love to say it's just your food. It's not. So, we do, so in our program, we teach nutrition, but we also teach the importance of stress management and the importance of gut health and the importance of sleep, and then the importance of mindset and understanding, again, helping you get to the point where you can write your own playbook, where you have a set of guidelines that work for you. They may not work for your neighbor or your sister or your husband, but they'll work for you, and that they're sustainable for you, and that you can do them long term. Because the other myth, I think, in diet land is that you do the diet and then you go into maintenance phase. And the thing with maintenance phase was that it was always the promise of more food. And it's like, well, actually, it doesn't even work that way. The thing you do to lose the weight is the thing you do to maintain it. So therefore, we want to make the losing bit maintainable.
That is fantastic.
I completely agree with you. I really do. And that is exactly what I have done to maintain my weight now for the last, with no regain at all, for the last 5 years. It is doing what I did to lose the weight, and just with some very slight tweaks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, most of us have done, diet land is like, it's like driving down a road and you're careering. One side, you're perfect, doing the restricted diet and yes, sort of losing weight, but it's unpleasant, unsustainable. And so then you go over to the other side where you're just kind of going, on a bit of a bender, eating whatever you like, and it's all out of control. And this, people have lived their life like this, careering down the road.
Yeah.
And I now think about it, I think I'm in the middle of the road, I've got lane assist. So what lane assist does, if you've got one of those cars with it, it kind of, you don't have to be perfect.
Yes, we do.
But it keeps you within a pretty narrow band, so that you're not waiting till you've, regained 20 kilos to take action. You can take action a bit earlier, like you did, Tash, where you realized, actually, I've got this little wine habit going on that I just need to rein it in. You're not waiting until there's a full-blown catastrophe to make some changes.
Yeah, that is exactly it. It's funny because I found so much freedom in learning about food, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that we don't learn enough about normal good food. Like we don't know what is in our food or what our food is.
Yeah.
What makes up our food, what protein is, what carbs are, what fats are. And for me, I found so much freedom in learning about that and understanding that, and just following the national guidelines has been quite good for me. Just a basic framework really, but I've just over time just been able to tweak that to be something that works for me. And I think that there's a lot of power in what we learn.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. I mean, I would highly recommend anybody that's looking to be able to grow in this way to access Dr. Lucy's courses. So we'll put all of those details in the caption of the podcast. Real Life Medicine is your podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the podcast is Real Health and Weight Loss. And look, yeah, again, it's not a very exciting title, but it's pretty clear as to what we're talking about. So yeah. I think sometimes you need
avail yourselves of the resources if you're listening in. And
I love that this is something that anybody can do.
It is. You don't have to have had bariatric surgery.
It will even work for families.
Yeah.
because, I think so often, I know I used to, I made too big an issue out of food and what I was going to eat, whereas now I look at it and it's just, I need to eat something to get myself through the day, to have the energy that I need to do what I've got to do. And so I'm not worried anymore if it's, just a couple of eggs, or, it doesn't have to be anything gourmet. And I still love having those, amazing meals and stuff. But I think in some ways I enjoy it more now because I'm not trying to come up with some amazing meal every single day.
No. And again, a little reframe that I love, because sometimes people go, "Oh, I'm bored with my food now. I need something more exciting." So, okay, well, you can either go for something more exciting, that's up to you, you're the boss of you, or we can reframe the boring bit and go, well, boring's easy. It's like wearing a uniform to work. It's easy. I know what ingredients I need. I know what the food's going to be like. I know how it's going to taste. It's easy. I love easy. Easy's great.
Yeah.
Tash used to use a saying, consistently boring.
Consistently boring. But consistently boring has yielded consistent results.
Totally.
And
Totally.
that's what I needed. Like I said about the framework, like just learning what that would be. And of course, you can change it up within the framework. You definitely learn how to do that. But I find it exciting to be consistent because I couldn't be consistent back in the day, but now I can. Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, and again, consistency means you're not doing the highs and the lows. It's the lane assist. It's the if you
Autopilot.
can do that.
Yeah. Lane assist and cruise control,
Yeah.
You're on a long distance road
Journey.
trip. It's great to have lane assist and cruise control.
Absolutely. And that's what we want. And then every now and then you'll pop into a town, and that's okay because you'll stop and the car will be different. But if overall it's what we do most of the time that makes the difference.
Agreed. Love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Lucy. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
We hope that we can do this again.
Indeed. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.